The Bookshelf with Ryan Tubridy is brought to you by Eason, Ireland's favourite bookseller. Eason have a rich heritage of bookselling since 1886. In fact, it's probably where you got your first ever book, or maybe your last one, and hopefully your next one after you listen to this episode of our podcast. And stay listening for our Ryan Recommends slot, my weekly recommendation, where I'll discuss a book I've read recently that I think you'll really enjoy too. All the books we discuss on this episode of our podcast are available now in your local Eason store, or indeed order online from easons.com before 6 p.m. for same-day dispatch with free delivery when you spend over a tenner. Eason, be inspired. Welcome to The Bookshelf with me, Ryan Tubridy, and a guest whose life story will turn the pages over through the prism of just 3 books we've asked them to pluck from their very own bookshelf. And not just any old books, as you can imagine. We've got 3 books. 1, the childhood book. 2, the book that made them cry. And 3, the book that changed their life. And so too, our guest today, an Irish presenter, a podcaster, a DJ, a fitness expert. I mean, I'm sorry I have to feel like I'm reading this because I feel like I know her so well. She's a force to be reckoned with, and in the podcast world, with 2 hit shows under her belt. So My Therapist Ghosted Me, co-hosted with her best friend Joanne McNally. They've got over 3 million monthly listeners, a successful live tour across the UK, Ireland and Australia. She's just on the cusp of packing her bags to go to North America with a tour this year. Would you welcome to the Bookshelf, Vogue Williams?
I absolutely loved that pause there. I might get you to do that again for my Insta if you wouldn't mind. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
I had to find...
I've never sounded better.
I had to find your name on the list. Vogue Williams, welcome to the Bookshelf.
Thanks for having me. I did bring 4 books, but I feel like 2 of them are pretty much the same topic.
That's okay. Don't preempt the conversation, though.
Okay.
Because we need to find out a bit more about you and reading. I don't know you hugely well, but anytime I meet you, I'm always struck by the fact that you are a reader. You like books.
I love books.
Are you fussy?
I would say I'm quite fussy with books. I'd say I go on and off reading, but mainly I'm on reading. I think if there's a great TV show, that will take me away from reading. But then if I find an amazing book, I feel like more excited to read that book than I would if I was going to watch my TV show.
Yes.
I sometimes read it in the car and I feel so ill after it. But you know, when a book is so good and you have to drive somewhere, I'm like, I don't care, I need to read the book.
I love that. Do you have the need to get to bed early syndrome with a book? 2
hours at least before bed. I know.
What class of book brings that out in you, where you go, I've got to get to bed?
I kind of love, like, it's always fiction for me, or it's a book around death.
Go on.
I like them a lot.
Like
just death books.
The study of death.
The study of death. I got really into a book, a palliative care nurse wrote it. I found it really interesting because I went through a whole period of my life where I was very frightened to death. I think it was after having kids, because then you really have something like, I felt like I had something that I'd really miss when I died.
As in your children?
Yeah, so it makes you worry more about dying.
Did you have that with your folks or with anyone else in your life where you thought, if they go, I'm left behind? Does that happen? Did that happen as a kid?
No, it did. Do you know what? My dad died when I was young-ish. Like, I'd say I was 23, 24. And he was kind of always sick, so I was always expecting it. And I never wanted him to die, obviously. But then when he did die, because I had expected it and he'd been sick kind of since I was 12, in and out of hospital a lot, it wasn't so much of a blow because I kind of knew it was going to happen. He lived hard and had a great life, and then died when he was 68. So
that's
it's quite young,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite young.
Yeah.
But that's not where my weird fascination with death came from. I think it's when I had kids. I've got to stop talking about death. I'm going to be that weirdo.
Let's talk more about death because go back to where it sprang from when you had your first child, or maybe your second child.
Yeah.
How did it manifest itself in terms of walking along the street or in the shop? Or
okay, so I could walk along the street, and I still do this sometimes. I was Spenny and I were out for a dinner recently, and I saw this really old man sitting eating his dinner, and I was like, oh God, like, he must be really worried. And Spenny was like, what? And I was like, he must be really worried. And Spenny was like, he's here having his dinner, he's not worried about death. But when I see really old people on the street, I'm like, oh God.
So did you think the man was worrying over his dinner about dying?
I was just thinking he must spend a lot of his life being like, oh God, I'm like 80. I'm nearly on the way out. It's where my mind goes. I actually had to go and speak to a therapist about it. It's so bad.
I'll come to that in a second. I'm just trying to figure out what were you worrying about him, or were you worrying about you, or what was happening?
I felt really sad for him because I felt sad that he must be worrying about his impending doom when probably he doesn't really give it a second thought. But like, I think some people have I find it really interesting. Death, but also absolutely terrifying because it's 100% going to happen to all of us. And so like, it's so depressing to think of, and because you don't know what's coming after and you try and be positive about it, but is it really going to be there? I don't know.
Dermot Kennedy was playing in Hackney Church before Christmas. In 2023, and I was watching his show with his father, and Dermot was saying on stage,
were you worried about his dad?
No, the funny thing was, I think his dad was worried about him because Dermot was saying, I think a lot about death on the stage, and the dad turned to me and said, he's obsessed with dying. And
we'd probably get on very well then.
I think you should meet Dermot Kennedy and hang out together a little bit.
It'd be way too depressing.
But why so young? For someone who's so young to be worried about that far away.
Well, you'd think it would be that far away.
Now, see, there you are.
Well, I've done the AI test. Okay,
and
there's an AI test and it will tell you when you're going to die.
And do you want to give us an indication?
I get to 102, which I'm thrilled about.
Congratulations.
Spencer's going to go before me, 3 months before me. And we've decided that it's till death do us part, and then we're moving on from each other in the next life. Yes.
I don't
know who I'll meet up there, I'm going to be busy.
Did you, do you believe in...
I do, I think Ricky Gervais very openly says that when you die, you die, but I like to think that there is definitely something else. We're all too different. I feel like we all have a soul and it must go somewhere. And one of the books, I'll tell you about it later, really helped with that. But I just think it's too depressing to think otherwise, isn't it?
Would you rather make up a fantasy post-mortal life?
Are you die when that's it? You think that's it?
It feels upsetting to say so, but it does.
Ryan,
there has to be something. It's like, what happens?
There has to be something else.
Have you seen The Wizard of Oz? I mean,
I have not. I can't.
It's just the man behind the curtain, is it?
No, listen. I'm going to give you a book today that's going to change your whole life, right? Because I double bought it by accident because I thought I didn't have it and I wanted to bring it here.
Okay.
So I bought an extra one. So you're going to have this one.
This is not a gift. This is an accident. I think it's clear to say.
No, it's a gift.
You had no intention of gifting me this book.
Excuse me, I paid $8.99 for that book.
By
I'm
accident.
giving it to you. By accident.
No.
Yes.
Now let's talk about you as a kid and books in the house. Were they around the place? Did you have to ask for them? Were you read stories or did you do the reading as a child?
So I actually, when I was having the research call for this pod, I didn't realise how much I actually did read as a child. I read a lot. One story that sticks out in my mind though is my stepdad. We met him when I was 7 and he took on 3 kids. He didn't have any children of his own and we weren't like normal kids. We were nightmares. And so bad. And so my sister, you've met Amber, her in particular, but I wasn't far behind. So
like a tornado with hair.
That's exactly what she's like. And I'm just the whirlpool beside her.
Yeah. The good whirlpool. Little Eddie.
I get caught for nothing, but I do it. But so he was trying to bond with us and he was thinking that kids must love being read to because that's obviously what I've seen. And so we had 2 single beds. We shared a room and we're like jumping from bed to bed to bed. And he's a Scottish man and he came in with The Hobbit. Ooh. And he was trying to read The Hobbit to us and...
No.
There was just no chance for him. We were just screaming, running around the room, jumping from bed to bed, and he just couldn't believe that we were so insane that he was like, that's it, that was it. He tried to read to us and then left. So we were left to our own devices, and I used to read The Babysitter's Club, which was a series of novels. I was so tempted to buy that again, and I thought I'm too old for it.
No, we'll come back to reading books from your childhood, but yeah, Babysitter's Club.
Goosebumps was one of the ones I loved. And obviously I didn't have it sitting on my shelf because I haven't read it in so long. But they're books. They're like a trilogy of books and they're kind of scary stories, but they're not overly scary. They're for kids.
When we ask you to pick 3 books, the first book is the book from your childhood.
Yeah.
and you decided maybe not the Babysitters Club for this one, because it's quite hard to pick the book in any of these categories.
Yeah.
But you've gone for?
I went for Goosebumps.
Okay, so tell me about them.
So Goosebumps it's by R.L. Stine, who is an author, obviously, and they were all different stories, but all scary stories. And the reason I actually got Goosebumps again instead of the Babysitters Club was because I thought my son Theodore would love, because he reads now, but like he obviously doesn't read a lot. Like he has small little books from school, but I thought he'd love to sit and listen to me read that because he'd be fascinated by them. Now I haven't checked the age limit on them.
How old is he?
He's
Theodore?
5.
He's 5. And have you sat with him and read them yet?
Haven't read Goosebumps yet. I'm trying to find out if it's age appropriate.
Yeah, for you or him.
I was going to read it on the tube. And
And see. So tell me, what did these books do for you when you were a kid? Was it kind of, did you get a little frisson of fear from them? And
you'd be absolutely terrified reading them, but like I loved it, and I loved going upstairs to read my books. And I can't believe that I used to sit and read, because I was like
hyper, as we used to say.
Really, crazy child. So I'm surprised I ever sat still to read.
But isn't it funny that it was only when you were asked, what did you read as a child, you went, oh, nothing, I was too busy running around. You went, actually, I read quite a lot.
Yeah, I did read quite a lot.
So I wonder what made you read, or what encouraged you to read, or
we only had 2 channels. Remember?
That helps on TV.
That was it. Yeah.
That was it.
We used to watch The Simpsons, and that was about it. And Beauty and the Beast on repeat on a VHS tape that was taped off the TV.
And then read.
Yeah.
And then read.
And that was it.
So do you remember going to bookshops, or how you got the books, or do you remember any of that?
I actually don't remember how I got the books, but we were brought to the library, which I think was quite nice. And there's a lovely library in Howth as well. I keep threatening to bring the kids there, because actually to run around and just choose books that you'd like, and the idea of renting it, because we have a huge amount of books at home for the kids, and they absolutely love it. We read to each of them separately before bed at night, and they love it. And they have this story box. It's called a Tony box, and you stick these characters on it.
Oh, I've heard of these. Yeah, I remember these.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And so you stick these characters on, and even Otto, he's not even 2 yet, and he started listening to like the Peppa Pig one.
Right.
So at breakfast time he might pop on the Peppa Pig one, and reading is massive in our house. Even for Spenny started reading as well. I think it's important to like read to your children when they're very young, and they really enjoy it. They love that time before bed.
Where did that come from, in the sense that you weren't read to? I mean, your stepfather had a go at The Hobbit, and that was the end of that. But you know what I mean? You weren't read to as such, but yet you really sound like you're determined to read stories to your children, have reading and books in their lives. And yet, even though it wasn't necessarily in the ether when you were a kid.
I think I always saw my mom read as well, but she had 3 jobs at one stage, and she was a single mom to 3 kids, so I don't think she really had time to read to us and stuff like that. But but I always remember her having a book, and she would still read a lot now, and we swap books with each other. But for me, like, I love the smell of books, and I think that with kids as well, if they watch TV too close to bedtime, you're not getting them asleep. So there's a whole bedtime routine, and it just involves books.
Isn't that great?
It's really nice.
And there's something about taking a screen out of the equation entirely, whether it's the TV or the phone, whatever, and the smell of it, as you say, the page turning. You can all gather around one if you want to.
Yeah.
And you said, Spenny, your husband, is he reading more than he used to? Is that what you're saying?
He didn't used to read at all. And he got really into reading. He started with Wim Hof. Because he's mad for ice baths.
So to describe, I was going to say, to describe who he is, he's the kind of bearded wizard.
Iceman.
The Iceman cometh. Yeah.
So he's mad into ice baths. So Spenny loves reading books around health and ways to improve, like, your breathing, and ways to improve your sleep. So I let him do that, and he gives me the down low on them, and I take out all the good bits, and then I read my own books. Yeah,
and you get stuck into it. So Goosebumps is the book from your childhood that we're going to go for now. Mm-hmm. They made a TV show of that, I think, at one stage.
Yeah, they did.
That's for another day. And then we move on to the book that I'm going to go with the book that made you cry, actually.
I'm actually so glad you started this podcast. It's so nice to sit and talk about books.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of...
And we always spoke about books.
Always. And now now we can turn it into something fun. And I think that people...
people love a recommendation as well.
They love to be led, into bookshop wise.
Yeah.
Even if they don't agree with the book that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But we've exchanged the odd recommendation.
I've loads, and I line them all up on my shelf. I love looking at them. I've got a couple. You told me about that strange Sally Diamond, so she's 3rd on my list. I go through them because I've so many just waiting.
Yeah, you like your crime books, don't you? I mean,
I like crime books. I love romantic novels. but not too like I went through a Colleen Hoover phase, and I went real deep on the Colleen Hoover phase, and I feel like if you are looking to get back into reading, they're really easy. But then I found out they were mainly for teenagers, and I was like, I need to grow up and stop reading them. But I still, like, when I see them on the shelf, I'm like, I'll just have one more then.
I'll just have one. But they're like your treats, you know.
Yeah, they're like my treats.
And I always say it doesn't matter what anyone is reading once they're reading, because it just adds
once you're reading something.
Yeah, it just means it adds to your vocabulary and your ability to, and it actually becomes fun trying to break down a word, the etymology of a word. Go, what's that? I haven't heard of that one before. I have a little dictionary beside my bed, like proper, because if I had the phone and I opened it up to dictionary.com, whatever, then I go, while I'm here, I might just see what's happening on Instagram, whatever. Whereas if you have a dictionary, you just say, what's the word? And you put it back down again.
You're such a nerd.
I am.
You're the only person who has a dictionary.
I think I'm the last person who bought one. If anyone needs to borrow a dictionary.
They don't sell them anymore, so they'll just borrow yours.
They just come to my house and say, can I borrow your dictionary? Yes. What's the word? It's I can't even remember it. It's
but you are actually, you're right about that, and I think reading as well is like, because I can get quite bad anxiety, and I know things that like make me feel anxious, and being on your phone before bed, it keeps you awake. It doesn't get you ready for sleep.
Vibes.
Bad vibes. And if you read a book and your head is so in the book, and then you find yourself you're starting to get sleepy, and then it's such a nice way to fall asleep.
You described it so well.
Yeah.
When your eyes go heavy reading a really good story where you're saying the only reason I want to stay awake is to read another paragraph. Like you really that's
want
joy.
To get to that. Yeah.
That's right. That's nerd joy, right?
That's the only thing I look forward to in old age, by the way. Like sitting there any afternoon of the week reading and just falling asleep on this couch, and it doesn't matter because I'm 70.
Yeah. And you're about to die.
Yeah. No. 32 years. Thank you very much.
You're sitting there. Okay, so you find you mentioned anxiety, and I think that reading is definitely 100% an escape from anxiety. Is it? Do you think so? That it's a lovely place to go where if the world is conspiring against you as you see it, rightly or wrongly, you just think, I need because they are portals to other worlds.
Yeah,
and sometimes you just need to go. La la la. Yeah.
But that's exactly it. But what you make up even in your mind when you're reading something. So like someone could read the same book as you, and like the way everything is described could be completely different in their mind as it is to your mind. And I feel like if you get really into an amazing book, it's like you're watching a TV show in your own head, and it's the best TV show you'll ever watch.
Do you cast the film or the TV show? Do you find yourself going, she'll play that or he'll play that? Or do you
about the book. There's loads of books though. I'm like, why has that not been made into a movie? It'd be so good.
Are you a crier? Do you cry? I mean, when you're watching things, or if your kid's upset, or if you're naturally more stoical than that.
Yeah, I'm definitely a crier.
Are you?
A crier and a worrier. Yeah. Anything could set me off. And if I read a book, I like, honestly, because it feels so real to you when you're reading the book that you're just like, oh God.
What makes you cry in real life?
Real life, a lot of the stuff that goes on in the news makes me cry all the time.
Yeah. If you saw a report on any given war,
I can't
are you gone?
I find it unbearable. Yeah. And sometimes I actually have to remove myself from looking at it, and then I feel bad because I feel like you should be looking at it and you should be educating yourself. And I was saying that to you about certain podcasts that I listen to. I'm trying to listen to more history podcasts, and I'm like, God, it was so desperate. And like, I can listen to about half an hour, and then I'm like, right, I need something seriously upbeat after that, because that would set me off. It's just so sad.
Yeah. And in terms of anxiety, what makes you anxious then? I mean, is it the same thing or is it different things?
What makes me anxious? I think when you're quite an anxious person, it's very important to figure out what kind of contributes to that. And I think drinking a lot. And I don't even drink that much. Yeah. I just went off booze for a month, and I drank on Saturday, and I know all day yesterday I was really anxious, and I know it was because I was drinking on Saturday, and then I feel so guilty that I don't feel good, that I'm like, that makes me anxious.
Yeah.
And I think for me mainly it's booze a lot, and I have a lot, like I would always have quite a lot on, but I think I kind of thrive off being super busy as well, so it's weird.
Is busy distraction?
Busy, I love being distracted.
Is that distracting from your own thoughts?
No, I'm not. I feel like I've gotten it under control a lot. I think when you go through big life events, like I've gotten divorced and stuff like that, like that's a very anxious thing, like period to go through.
Yeah.
So there was that, and like just different things that happen in your, stressful things that happen in your life. That mine just, I find it more difficult, I think, to kind of just deal with them. Whereas my husband wouldn't even know what anxiety is. I remember I told him that I get anxiety and I have like times where I'm super anxious, and like only when he kind of saw me in a real panic one day, he was just like, oh my God, I never knew that it was.
Gosh, what a gift for him.
I know.
Not to be anxious.
Because he just doesn't care what anyone says about him. Once they're talking about him, he's happy.
Okay, well, look, that's a guest for another show. I'll stick with you for the moment.
You can have him because he reads now. He'd love people to know he reads.
No, that's funny. Are you good in your own company? Are you good being on your own?
I really love being with people. Like, I love
That's
being
not
with
what
people.
I asked you.
I'm fine. I would be fine in my own company. But I wouldn't choose to be in my own company for like long periods of time.
Why is that?
I just prefer the being around people.
Yeah.
I love it. Like if I'm going for a walk, I love going home to Howth, and like I plan kind of my flights around. If I'm working one day, I'll try and get in early because me and my friend Megan would go for this big walk around the cliff walks, and I'd rather do that with somebody else than with myself. But I could do it on my own.
Yeah, but you're a sociable creature in that sense. You don't being on your own wouldn't be a horrific thought either necessarily, would it?
No, it wouldn't be horrific.
Not for too long.
Oh my God, I'm not that bad. I'm okay to be around. No, I can be on my own, certainly. And sometimes I do enjoy it. Like if I have to go home for work, I'll go to bed at 8:00, which I usually do, and I'll just read on my own. I'll be more than happy to be on my own.
I love that. Especially after you've had a run of sociable things or something. You just go, just stop.
I try not to have too many sociable things, particularly at night.
Yeah.
I'm a day person.
Let's talk about the book that made you cry then, the second book that you brought in for us today. What did you bring in?
You must have read it.
Talk to me.
John Boyne, The Heart's Invisible Furies.
Love that book.
What? I cannot wait until I forget the book.
Remind us what it's all about for the people.
So it's going back to, it's in Ireland, and it's basically, I don't want to give too much away. Let's see what it says.
You can blurb it up, yeah.
And a terrible, okay, cast out from home, 16 and pregnant. A woman goes to Dublin because her family don't want her to have the baby, and then she has to give the baby up for adoption, and it kind of goes through her life. Let me see.
Yeah.
And that's all I can really say. So
and there's a lot of Catholic Church horrors.
There's a lot of Catholic Church stuff. It's really, really sad, but sad in kind of a good way. And a book that I just never wanted to end. And a book that I'm definitely not leaving here because it's one that I want to forget. You know, and you haven't read a book in so many years and you're like, I'll read that again.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do with this book.
They're great. Can we just ask you a bit about what made you emotional reading this? And
I think it's because, like, although it's a fictional book, these things happened in Ireland, and it's just so sad to think that, like, even such a short time ago, like 40, 50 years, these things were still happening to women in Ireland, and they were just cast out because they got pregnant. And there's the man who got the woman pregnant, and he's gone and living his life, and he's perfect, and she's disgusting and shameful. And it even gives me goosebumps now talking about it.
Yeah. It's distressing, isn't it? To think
it is.
That's a fictional take on a story that affected thousands and thousands of young, imagine 18, 16, 17, 18,
Crazy.
Dragged into this.
Their lives ruined, them being made feel like they're disgusting, and like their babies taken away from them and given away. Like I was told a story of someone, and like literally a nun called to her granny's house and said, "Do you want a baby? I heard you've had trouble not having a baby." And the next day there was a baby on the doorstep. Like, whose baby is that? That's someone's baby that was taken away from them that they didn't want to give away. And it's so sad because there's so much real life in that as well. And I think he is so amazing at doing that. Like even when he writes about when he writes about the boy in the striped pajamas, like amazing. Like he obviously wasn't there, but he's read so much around World War II that he was able to create this story around it that makes it so almost personal to you. And he kind of does that with that book, and he does it with his newest book, which I absolutely loved. I could not put that book down. What was it called
All
again?
the Broken Things. That's the follow-up to The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
One of the best books I've ever read as well.
Yes.
But that really got me. I had to take that one because I nearly took the other one, and then I was like, no, I'm going to take that one.
Yeah. It's interesting that you picked that one though, because it's more than just a work of fiction. It reflects the Irish society at a given time.
Yeah.
It's saying something about that, which I think it's food for thought as well in terms of social justice or lack of that.
Yeah, and we still have loads of things going on. Like when you see what happened in Ireland with Repeal the 8th and everything like that, there's like just even the way things have happened since then, and just the way women were treated, it was just so awful.
Yeah.
And that poor woman in that book, it's just so sad to think of her whole life and how she went through her whole life, and just reading about it was amazing. And although it's a sad book, it's an epic book. Like, you have to read it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. It's a great choice. I was really impressed because it's one of the great, I think, slightly underestimated story as well.
Yeah.
You don't hear a lot of people talking about it as much as they should have.
Yeah.
As a book, in terms, I think people wait till they win prizes and what have you. But
that was a book that I got through. Someone just telling me about it. I think that's the best way, word of mouth with a book. And that's why even with this podcast, I was like, God, it's really hard to try and choose. Yeah, because there's so many.
Yeah.
So I do have 4 on the table. But anyway,
we'll come to that in a second. In terms of the books, the life-changing books, I think this is also a really hard one to pick because, does a book, or can a book really change things dramatically, or can they move you not in an emotional sense, because we've talked about John Boyne's book, but can a book move you in a way that you might want to change who you are, or be so affected that it can change your life? You read a bit of non-fiction along the way as well?
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you like self-help, or do you like no that was a big grumpy face there.
I know.
No, you really grumped it.
I know.
No, you looked at me now as if I took one of your kids and threw him into a stream and said, "That's your problem. I'm off."
I know.
You really did.
Do you read self-help?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
No.
I don't know. I have
huge business. People love them.
Huge business. But like it's like the books about manifesting and stuff like that. I just can't get on board with it.
Yeah.
I can't. I just can't.
Well, if you manifest it. No.
I would like to manifest winning the Powerball in America, because that's the most money
in the world. Barry Keoghan, I always use him as a good example.
Yeah.
When I met him not long after his Love-Hate Day, so he's only just starting out.
Started watching that again.
That's really good.
Spenny's watching it with me. It's on
brilliant.
ITVX, yeah.
Are you using subtitles for Spenny?
Spenny. He actually gets it. No, he understands the Irish accent now. He thinks everyone's from Cork, though. He's like, are they all from Cork? I was like, no, that's inner city Dublin. They're not from Cork.
Yeah, I'll bring it to Cork. You'll understand. But Barry Keoghan said that he had a notebook, and in the notebook he wrote down a list of actors and directors he wanted to work with as part of his manifestation.
Barry Keoghan worked his arse off. He didn't manifest anything. He's been working as a child actor since he was like nothing. So he has worked really hard, and he has done, I'm telling you, he's done hundreds and hundreds of jobs where he hasn't got paid anything for. And I don't think it's luck. He is so talented, and obviously there's the tiniest bit of luck that helps you be in front of the right person at the right time, but I think that's very much hard work.
Anyway, we digress from manifestation and self-help. So you don't like self-help books? No.
I don't read self-help book. I see a therapist every so often because I find that's very helpful to offload, but I don't know why. In fairness, I've never read a self-help book, so I don't know if they would help you. I assume they would, but you kind of like what you like when you read. And some people like doing that. Like Spencer would read a lot of stuff around, this is my husband, he'd read a lot of stuff around health and everything like that. Whereas I wouldn't be as interested in that. I like to get the bullet points off him because he does have interesting things in his books, but he wouldn't be interested in what I'm reading. So it's funny how people work. Some people love self-help books.
Sure, look,
they do work.
There's whole sections of bookshelves and bookshops, I should say, are just, it's an industry, wellness. And if it works for you,
I know, I like a wellness book.
Oh, sorry, is there a difference?
Well, self-help, I like to try and change how you are to make you feel happy.
And wellness is more about...
Wellness is more like fitnessy to me.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
As an athlete,
you're a runner, Ryan.
You're running away from you after this. But I don't. Anyway, let's talk about the book that changed your life, because we're now into non-fiction, but we're not into the self-help section.
We're not into the self-help section. So this is a really difficult question, by the way, as well. I nearly didn't have a book. I had to really think about it. And the book, I would say... Oh, no, not that one. That was the extra one I snuck in. Okay, the book. So this is when I was going through my real death problem. This is going to be a very deathy podcast. I'm going to sound insane. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Do you know what? That's why God created listeners, because they can decide how mad you sound.
So,
no, talk frankly, because
so I was having, I genuinely was having, it wasn't just in my thoughts every so often. I went through a phase where I would think about death all the time, the whole time during the day.
What age were you?
This is only a year ago. Like, it was really bad. I had to go and see a therapist
That's
about it.
quite
I was like,
intense.
I can't stop thinking about death. Like, it wasn't just your man in the restaurant. It was every old person I walked by in the street. I'd be like, oh, Jesus Christ, that poor bastard. He must be terrified. It was just my thought process the whole
And then the next
time.
little old lady by the bus
the next
stop.
one,
She must be
the
terrified.
Time. Still now, the odd time when I see a really old person, I'm like, oh, Jesus. I know it's insane.
And I'm so. Your concern is for their terror at being so old.
I feel so sorry for them because they must be so scared. I know, it's terrible.
Oh, it's my favorite non-fear terror story I've ever heard.
Feeling so sorry for somebody else thinking that they might be scared, but they probably aren't.
I don't want to take away from how weird that was for you, because you did eventually have to say, I better talk to somebody about this.
Yeah,
it's
I
not
was
healthy.
like, this is going a bit
What point do
far.
you say enough already with the...
Because I would be going to bed at night and I would be thinking about it and thinking of my own demise and being so petrified. I was like, this is just not good.
Crikey.
Yeah, like, and it had just kind of come from nowhere. So, like, I'd never really felt like that before. I'd never really thought about it. And I was like, well, I need to try and figure something out to do. And then I started kind of confronting death in a way, because I was like, this will be the best way to not be afraid of it.
And how do you confront death?
I started reading books around death, but there was one book that someone told me to read. It's called Many Lives, Many Masters. That's my life-changing book. And it's by a man called Dr. Brian Weiss.
Okay.
And he's a psychiatrist.
Which I have great time for psychiatrists. My dad was one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I always, when I associate psychiatry with smart people for some reason.
Yeah.
And that's
Very scientific brain, keep in mind.
okay. Go on. Why are you saying that?
Because someone said to me, if you read this book, it will really help you with, like, for instance, this is why I think that you might start thinking that there's something after death. Because I read this book. So there was a woman who had come to see him and she was severely anxious. She was quite young and he couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. So he started doing hypnotherapy on her, because that was part of his practice. And she basically started going through past lives and
His past lives.
no, her past lives.
Oh, sorry. Her past lives.
And when it goes through the books, I'm trying not to see, I don't want to give too much away. It was basically, it's the continuation of life after death and the influence of our past life experiences on our present behavior. So by him going back through her past lives, he was able to figure out why she was so anxious and why, like, because she was really having problems with her life. And he was able to figure that out. And I just thought it was an amazing book.
So was he able to say, okay, you were, forgive me, was in the past lives, say, okay, in the 1800s, you were
but
a nun,
she was telling him this. So he was recording the sessions and she was telling him about all of her past lives. And then at one point in the book, these masters would come in and they were like the main souls, like, that were in charge of all the souls that go to heaven, and you have your past life and then you go back down and you go back. And like, he was like, it was the most insane events that ever happened. And he was like, I can't explain it with my scientific mind. I'm trying to explain it, but I can't explain what's going on here. And so that's why he wrote the book. And it's completely changed his views on life after death.
What did it give you? Because this does sound like it. This is a perfect example of the book that changed my life, because you needed to shift your brain here. So what did you get from it? What did
it gave me a level of comfort to think that there was something else.
Brilliant.
So I was like, this is why you're going to read it and you'll be thrilled with yourself. And it gave me just that level of comfort. I was like, well, actually, now I actually kind of believe again. I believe more. In life after death.
An afterlife. Yeah.
And also one part of it was that that souls reconnect in a second life. Because, like, obviously I was worrying about my kids. So you tend to stay in your same circle. So I'm going to see you in the next life too, Ryan.
Well, now I don't want to die. Because I was kind of enjoying life, without my soul
Tough luck. We're
contaminated by Vogues. The idea of putting a book down after having described the anxiety, I know we were joking about it, but it does sound like it was a bit all-consuming.
Yeah, it was for a while. Yeah,
and there must have been that lovely moment where you put the book down and go, you know what? It's going to be okay.
It was actually so nice, but it kind of then set me on a path of reading loads of death books.
Yeah, but was that instructive and useful?
Yeah, I found it really useful. I read a book, I can't remember what it was called now, but it was a palliative care doctor, and she kind of went through all of her patients, and she had like, I don't know, maybe there was 40 patients in the book, and she went through their lives and their death, and I found it like very interesting to read about that.
So different cases.
Yeah, loads of different cases, and just really fascinating, really upsetting book, but it's what happens in life, and it made me feel better.
It made you feel better. And how would you describe your relationship with death now?
The odd person I'll go by now and I'll think, poor bastard. But usually I have quite a normal day, and I don't think about it very often. It was a really weird time. I don't know where it came from. It just cropped up. And I think if you face things that you're scared of, actually, they kind of do help. I did Kathy Burke's podcast, You Plan Your Own Funeral.
Yeah.
And I would have said no to that. Like,
really, even the idea of a phony plan your own funeral thing would have been.
Had a great time planning it. It's going to be a great day out for everyone.
Did you pick the music and everything?
Yeah, I picked everything. Can't remember what music I picked.
I've got to listen back to the podcast now. I'm intrigued to know about your funeral, given what you've been talking about. I
still might have still been in the crazy-ish phase around death then. This is me normal around death now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's intriguing, and that the fact that you attribute it largely to, or maybe just point to the fact that it was kicking off after your children were born.
I think and I did read somewhere that some women do actually have that after they have kids. They're just worried about leaving them behind.
And then the fact it was soon after your third child was born, maybe almost that sense of there's the trilogy. What happens now?
Yeah. Oh God.
With the first two, it was like, well, there'll be more, so it's grand.
Yeah.
And the third may or may not be your last. I don't know.
And I suppose when you lose parents, like you're kind of like, well, realistically, I'm next in line in the family. Like you're the generations. Do you know what I mean? You're like, you're meant to be next in line. So like I've lost a parent already. So
somebody gave me that awful image once of the elevator. The escalator.
Yeah.
Not the elevator, the escalator in the supermarket. And that's life, and that's us. And then just it gets to the top of it, clunk, next.
Oh God,
clunk.
I know.
It's pretty grim.
I know, but life is so good. Like I'm having such a nice time that I'm like, please, I don't want to go.
But a lot of people don't live it, you see. Do you find that some people, and it's not about being smug about it. It's more just a sense that be careful, lads, because it's not like...
It's not forever. Just make sure you try your best to be happy. And I think that like a measure of success is always how happy that you can make sure that you are, and spend time with people you want and that you want to spend your time with. Like, don't waste it. But saying that, like, sometimes it's nice to just do absolutely nothing. Did you ever get that when you became a dad, where that people were like, oh, well, don't miss a moment because it won't last forever? And it's like, well, I can't stay at home all day, like attached to them.
Not at all.
No.
I mean, no. And I think it's great for them when you just live as much of it. Well, he says a normal life. You try to live as a decent, good, fun life as well.
Yeah.
Because they learn. Like it's like you described earlier on about the kids' book. Just to go full circle for a second with your own kids and with mine. You leave. I always say it's like Hansel and Gretel. You leave books around the place. Don't force them to read it, because they'll never read it. If you say you must read, but if you leave but what's this? Or the joy of going to a bookshop with your son or your daughter is one of the greatest skills of all time. Or the library.
If we're going on a long flight anywhere, I always let them each choose a book. But Theodore, my oldest, he's 5, and he's literally just started reading, and it's just amazing.
He's got it.
He's reading like he can spell little words like cat and dog, and it really is amazing that he's even just reading small pages in a book.
It so begins.
Yeah,
like what a gift. And when some people listening, and this isn't a books podcast for books snobs.
Yeah, no.
There are plenty of people listening to this podcast who would love to read, and they will. They just haven't met the right book yet, I always say.
Yeah.
And equally, they'll hear somebody, hopefully like today, they could hear about you talking about such and such a book and go, I'm going to give that a go.
The joy of reading.
Yeah.
Like you can forget it, and then you get back into a book. I think if you find one good book that you absolutely cannot put down. I think what got me back into reading was because I didn't read, honestly, the whole time I had kids. Up until about 2 years ago, that's when I got right back into reading again. And it was the 7 Sisters of Evelyn Hugo that got me back into it. I could not put it down.
Was it the 7 Husbands?
7 Husbands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason I know that is because you told me about that book.
Did you read it?
Yeah, of course I read it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, actually. And it's
an easy read.
An easy read.
Yeah.
And well written and fun and sassy.
Exactly.
And a good start and not too long.
No, exactly. And I think when you find it, like you can find an author, and usually they'll have a good few books for you to read.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I'm going to go back in for another John Boyne, because I just, even though he writes very sad books.
Go for
I
Water.
really enjoy Go for Water.
Go for Water. It's short, set on the islands, and all the stories will link, but it's really good. And you know, when you'll read it really quickly.
Yeah.
So that lovely achievement of reading a book, regardless.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I think
another book.
You'll get another one done.
I'm stuck on I Am Pilgrim now. It's like 9,000 pages long. Gosh.
Well, you'll finish that in 2027. Which will be a nice.
I just carry it though everywhere. I'm like, look how clever I am.
Yeah. It's all thick book. The last question we asked before we say goodbye, Vogue, is about the book that the autobiography that you haven't written yet. Let me ask you before I ask you that title, because I'm always intrigued by what people pick for this one as well. How do you feel about, let's say, when you're a little older, writing a book an autobiography that tells us everything about your first 50 years, say, on Earth?
I just would never do it, ever.
Is that about discretion, pride, embarrassment, or love?
Definitely discretion. I just think that like we've all been through loads of crap in our lives, and some people that you meet along the way might not have been very pleasant, might not have done very nice things, and I just wouldn't be one of those people I wouldn't want to it's not bad mouthing people. It's like, what's the point? You kind of move past points in your life, and I would never want to write things about somebody, because as well, there's my story, there's their story, and then there's the truth. And I think that to take someone, like, I just wouldn't want to do it. I just think it can be like, even like, I don't know, some people are able for it, like even with Prince Harry when he did his book, I was like, oh, I just couldn't write things like that, particularly about my family. But like, it will never happen for me. I will write a book, but I will never write an autobiography.
So you'll write a fiction book, do you think?
I'd say I'll write a fiction book.
That's there.
Yeah.
Is that going to be loosely based on characters you've met in the world in your life?
I think with anything, things are always based on...
What a great political answer that was.
Yeah, but they are.
Really good, though. Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, Ryan, I will say that in anyone's life, you meet people that may or may not end up in a biography. I bet that in my fiction.
Yeah. Well, you base things around characters. And I've got my sister. I can't waste her. She's amazing. What a great character for a book.
She's a leading role.
100%.
In any book that you're going to write. Yeah, Amber, for sure. So I like your summation of not wanting to write an autobiography. I think that there's sometimes you get to a point where you go, oh, I wouldn't want to embarrass anyone or
just write anything negative, or like, you never know what they would think about you. I'd hope nobody would want to put me in their books either. Would you ever write one?
No. Straight up, I didn't even have to second guess.
Same reason.
Pause. Yeah. I don't think I'd come out of it too.
God, I'd actually love to read yours. I'd love to read yours.
No, you wouldn't.
I'd get so much
You'd
gossip.
get a scare at bedtime. That's what you'd get. You'd be sitting there going, what? This is terrifying.
He did that?
What? No, I wouldn't. Family.
Yeah,
family,
but family who aren't doing what we're doing either. They don't want to be.
It's the curse in some ways. Yeah, they get dragged into this.
I even have people like, I'll be out for lunch with them, and they're like, "Don't put this in your podcast," because I will. I'll write notes of things that have happened, and they're like, "Don't put that in." Or I'll ring Amber and I'm like, "I told this story," and she's like, "Get it out of the pod."
Delete. Okay, let's talk about the book title. The autobiography that you're never going to write is going to be called what?
It's never going to happen.
Is that an answer to my question, or is that the name of the book?
That's the name of the book, because it's actually never going to happen. Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's that's not a title of an autobiography at all, relating to something in your life about it not happening. No, this is just you reflecting on, it's just never going to happen.
No, and I think if you're going to write one though, you have to be so honest and like give absolutely everything. And that's a lot to give for a book.
Yeah.
No money's really worth that. Well, I mean, I'd throw everyone under the bus for 100 mil.
So there is. Yeah, bring out the check. I've loved talking to you today.
I love that you're doing this podcast. I really love it.
No, it's just we get an insight into you that I think people won't be familiar with, and it's just a different twist on.
I'm
going to
start annoying you with people I want you to get on. Now I'm like, please get him. I'd love to see what he's reading.
Well, we will because I think people will be interested, and it also hopefully will push people in the direction of books they would never have thought of reading.
Yeah.
I mean, already you're giving me your secondhand cast off.
This is the new one, by the way. This is the brand. Oh no, it's not.
No, it's not. It's dog-eared. Yeah. You're just. I mean, what am I?
This
anyway,
is the old one.
I'm like an Oxfam shop with hair, just throwing
It's
secondhand
nice. It
books at
still
you.
smells like a book. You're grand. Yeah, it's a lovely book. You're
Well,
very lucky.
Do you know what
It's very short as well. Look at that.
That's fine, and I'm going to have a new relationship with the afterlife as a result.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, you scooted into Steve's here today.
I did.
I was so impressed, and I know you're busy, but lots of love to you and Spenny and the family and Vogue. You're just wonderful. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So here's this week's Ryan Recommends, brought to you by Eason, Ireland's favourite bookseller. Do you know when you get a book that you love so much, you wish you hadn't read it so that you could read it for the first time again? Does that make sense? This is one of those books, The Wager by David Gran. Here's the guy that wrote The Killers of the Flower Moon, which is a super book, better than the movie. But The Wager was a lovely surprise. It's set in the mid-18th century. I've lost some of you already, and I don't blame you. It's not something I would have picked up ordinarily. But look at the cover of this book. It's a shipwreck with all those beautiful mats, but not just any shipwreck. Let me say it to you in a line. I don't think it's mine, but I'm going to use it anyway. If you can imagine, Lord of the Flies meets Robinson Crusoe, right? You want to read this immediately, don't you? I mean, it's so well written. It is a history book, and it's a true story, so it's non-fiction, but he writes it like the best crime writers you could possibly read. It's history jumping off the page. You feel the splash of the water and the wind in your hair as you're reading this book. This is a must-read for anyone with a passing interest in the past. How about that? Okay. Now, this book and all the books we discuss on this episode of our podcast are available now in your local Eason store, or you can order them online from easons.com before 6 p.m. for same-day dispatch with free delivery when you spend over a tenner. Eason. Be inspired.